I was the only one still alive from the expedition. As I found myself before this gigantic metal gate which stood closed and seemingly impenetrable, I began to ponder the most recent events, sure that these moments were to be my last, for the whole expedition was doomed from the start. It has been many years since Hollow Earth was left to rust in the forbidding bowels of deep caverns. Biocorp had only begun to recuperate from the damage it suffered during the split when technocrats called me into their office. They explained to me that they wanted to unearth, pardon the expression, several abandoned but not forgotten projects from Hollow Earth, and salvage that which can be salvaged from the once impressive research complex. Biocorp desired this expedition in hopes of at least slowing down its decline, which started years ago and wasn't about to stop. Internal struggles only worsened the situation. Of course, due to the severity of the task, it could not be entrusted to just about anyone. A senior scientist of my qualifications and experience was to lead the expedition, since only someone like that could be allowed to lay eyes on some of the most sensitive information Biocorp ever possessed. I accepted. I was truly excited to be going into deep caverns, and despite being familiar with how hostile the environment was, I cared very little for that fact. On the contrary, I viewed it as a new opportunity, a new high point in my career, and entrusted our survival into the hands of Captain Sagan's men without overthinking it. Few of my scientist colleagues were also to follow me on this mission, and once all parties were ready, we made our descent. Into death, at least for most of us. Environment had changed significantly between the Hollow Earth incident and the moment of our arrival, even more than we expected. Environmental hazards, natural predators in form of horrid and surprisingly alien creatures, as well as other unexplained phenomena were quick to decimate us. Bullets can stop beasts, but for how long? Hazard suits can save us from toxic fumes and corrosive liquids, but for how long? Reaching the main complex soon proved to be mission impossible. The immediate way to the east was blocked by an impenetrable cave-in, so we had to circumvent it by going to the north. After taking the first few steps toward our goal, we already found ourselves under siege by death itself. And it sated its hunger quickly, luckily, before it got to me. I was the only one still alive from my expedition. We fled north and found refuge by one of the large gates. Rust, mold, and demise were in the oxygen-devoid air, as well as some strange pulsating sensation which violently pressed on my skull. Poor Captain, the only one still with me, was lying in a corner and was slowly fading away, with last bits of life leaving his mangled body, surrendering it to decay. He performed his duty to his very last breath. I was ready for the same fate. But then the large gates opened. Light illuminated the area, and strange pain from my head was instantly gone. While the lights weren't as bright as the ones in university, it was much better than the dwindling glow of my last flare. I stepped through the gate and faced something I wasn't prepared for. I faced it. It was giant. It was alien. It was formless. Strange creature was before me, and I had no clue of its origin or intentions, or really anything. All I could see is pure flesh with tentacles sprouting from it in all their glory. The sensation in my head returned, but this time it wasn't trying to kick down the door to my mind. Instead, it gently knocked. I answered politely. Tchort was the only thing I could interpret during this peculiar exchange of thoughts, for everything else can simply be described as just some strange feeling in my head. During my 3-week stay, I was allowed by Tchort to study it. Leftover equipment I was able to find in these old labs I combined with some of my own utilities and was able to set up an improvised laboratory, which was most excellent. Regarding nourishment, I still had my own personal supplies up to a point in time. Afterwards, I had to rely on natural sources. This is what I had learned during my stay before I finally left Tchort and returned back certain that what I had found was an extraordinary discovery of unimaginable importance. Tchort can be defined as a large multicellular organism of unknown age, but judging from its genetic makeup, it is primordial. While it shares a lot of common sequences with every living being ranging from the first single-cell organisms up to modern mammals, it is not directly related to us in any way. We do not have a clear common ancestor. How is that possible? Well, that I am about to explain. The creature can enter a state of unique type of regeneration cycles in which it loses any recognizable form and undergoes genetic self-repair. It puzzled me how and why it does so, but I had answers faster than I had thought I would. Tchort has a remarkably similar cell and DNA structure to us. The number of chromosomes and genes is indeed different, but a lot of recognizable sequences can be found there. The part of its genome that was non-coding was larger than in humans, and by studying it I have learned the answer to those two questions I asked myself previously. Whenever the creature begins suffering from any form of mutations, chromosomal deterioration, or even cancer, it can enter the aforementioned state of regeneration. It might do so in case when the environment changes drastically and new traits are necessary to survive. I was even able to pinpoint the gene responsible for this. Now, what happens when the creature begins regenerating is this. Its non-coding part of the genome, which can be in Tchort's case considered something of a genetic backup, begins coding for proteins which in turn change and rebuild the whole chromosome even up to the telomeres. How it knows what sort of adaptation it needs to survive in the new environment is not yet clear, nor how it is able to recombine or even create these new sequences. But even this was a magnificent find and raised another question. Can this be applied to humans or other living creatures as well? Due to the similarity of the DNA structure, the answer might as well be yes, and with that, many other questions sprang to my mind. Could we too use what we learn from Tchort and adapt ourselves at will? Could we live infinitely? Would we be able to control our own evolution and strive toward a goal unimaginable before? Could we finally return to the surface world? I wanted answers. And for that I was going to need time and support. As I had given Tchort the final look before I left, hoping that it wasn't going to be really the last one, it became clear in my mind what I must do. My return to university as a lone survivor turned out to be quite interesting, and can best be described as an end to one thing and the beginning of the other.